important, and maybe just as important is that he doesn't what's the right word? He doesn't actually come out and say, I don't back them, I oppose them. So say you were going to get this idea of, could you bring Rishi in a coronation? If Boris went to war with that idea, I think he could kill that idea. That is a really interesting thought. I mean, I wonder what you're listening, what you think of that one. I want to know. It's not a rhetorical question. Tell me what you think. Send me a text, 87222. Join our conversation. Start with the word Times and share. Send us an email, studio@times.radio, or send me a tweet, hashtag Times Radio to @Times Radio. Now, coming up here on Pina and Friends, is Britain in decline on the international stage? I'm going to be joined by a former Foreign Affairs advisor to Downing Street, a former British ambassador to the United States. Right now, it is 7:29. So let's get the latest news with Rachel Jewell.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.
Thanks, John. Good evening. Liz Truss has spent the day trying to garner support among her own MPs as two more polls make grim reading for the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, Number 10's refused to make any commitments over the pensions triple lock, which guarantees payments will increase. But Cabinet Office Minister Brendan Clark-Smith has told Times Radio this evening, we want to look after our pensioners.
I think, yes, we want to make efficiency savings, and yes, the Chancellor wants to come in and look at that and put a sensible plan that can reassure the markets and so on. But when we're saying we're not taking anything off the table, I do think it's reading too much into it to pick out specific things like the triple lock, which hasn't specifically been mentioned.
NHS England's warning it could be facing the toughest winter on record as it sets out how it plans to cope. Data-driven war rooms are being set up in every local area over concerns the combined impact of flu, COVID and staff shortages will cause unprecedented pressure. Two climate protesters who climbed the Dartford Crossing Bridge have been taken down and arrested. They spent 2 days sitting in hammocks high above the motorway, causing hours of congestion for drivers on the M25. And more train strikes have been announced. The RMT unions accuse Network Rail of backtracking on promises of an improved pay offer and will walk out on the 3rd, 5th and 7th of November. Looking ahead to tomorrow, further showery rain for southern and central areas. Some brighter, warmer spells too. Gusty winds in the west, dry in parts of Scotland. Toby Gillis has the sports.
There are concerns a policy by English rugby's top division for clubs who enter administration may force Wasps, a 6-time champion, out of existence. Premiership Rugby is expected to forcibly buy their so-called P share at a reduced price. The share ensures a club has access to a percentage of central funding. Because they're in administration, Wasps will be relegated at the end of the season, and if they are promoted again, buying their P share back will cost far more. The plan has seen one of the club's interested parties pull out of takeover talks. But the Times rugby correspondent Alex Lowe says there are legitimate reasons for Premiership Rugby to behave this way.
Martin Phillips, who's the independent chairman of Premiership Rugby and was looking at it, as he said, without a dog in the race, is if Wasps are allowed to retain their P share, then effectively they've got into administration, dumped their debt, but retain all the central funding. And if they allow it to happen, then those clubs come back up with full central funding, no debt, and compete against clubs who still have their debt.
There's international concern for a competitive climber who it's feared is being mistreated by Iranian officials for not wearing a hijab at the Asian Championships. Elnaz Rikabi was uncontactable after the event in South Korea at the weekend. The Times Middle Eastern correspondent Richard Spencer says if Rikabi's actions really were in support of the protests, she's brave, but not the only sportsperson to do so.
Two of the three biggest names in Iranian football in the last 2 decades, if you like, the Gary Lineker and Wayne Rooney of Iranian football, Ali Daei and Ali Karimi, have both taken very voluble stances. Ali Karimi has a warrant out for his arrest. He's in Dubai at the moment, but Ali Daei is very bravely staying in Tehran, putting up stuff on his social media feed saying, stand with the women.
British Gymnastics is to publish the names of coaches who are banned from the sport after a culture of abuse was uncovered in a report in June. It's published a 40-point plan to reform, which includes putting athlete welfare above medal winning. Among the issues discovered by the White Report, athletes who were forced to train through broken bones weight management, which resulted in eating disorders and sexual abuse. The chief executive of British Gymnastics, Sarah Powell, says thorough vetting of all staff and volunteers is central to their new plans.
One of the elements around safe sport is making sure that we have processes and policies in place, and if we are made aware of an investigation, then we will determine whether a child is at risk. If a child is at risk, then that person will be suspended and removed from that environment. If that child is not deemed to be at risk, then they will be able to continue to coach. The key thing here is that we are really clear about the standards that we expect for all of our coaches.
For more on these stories, visit the Times Radio app.
This is Times Radio. The Evening Edition with Kate Borsay. Tonight.